Hi everyone, it's Eric with Teletics. Today we're going to give you an introduction to our new TUtil 2.5.0.1, and this can also be used as a bit of a refresher course video for those of you that haven't used it in a while. So the first thing to do is go and get the new software, and that's at our website, teletics.com. Click on the support tab. Wait for the internet, and down here in the wintercom manuals and software, this is it right here, new TUtil wintercom 5.8 new mesh, and that's a zip file, so you're going to have to save this. Now, one of the things I'll warn you about right off the bat is this utility is quite a bit larger than it used to be. I mean, you can see we're up to 35 megs. The old one was quite a bit smaller, so you may want to do this in the office before you go out to the field because it'll take a while. So I'm just going to pause the recording here, and we'll be back in just a second once we've got that and we're ready to load. Okay, so I'm back. So our download is just finished here, as you can see. Depending on which browser you've got, you just want to go into your download folder. There's a zip file that's there. Double click on it, double click on setup, and what will happen here is it'll ask you for permission to install the software. That's all good. At this point, we might take a few minutes to download some additional software utilities from Microsoft. If that pops up, just say OK. Otherwise, just click on install. Now, there's something here that everybody gets confused with right off the bat. What's going on right now is that we're going out using the laptop and using the automatic IP settings for Windows to set or wait for the IP address for your networking. So if you look down here on your, this is called your system tray, you'll notice that the network icon is kind of happy at this point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug my laptop from the internet, and I'm going to plug in the wintercom system, and you'll see a little sort of blue circle appear down here, and it'll set the IP address for me automatically. So just give me a sec. Okay, hopefully you saw that little blue circle. What's happening now is Windows is actually going out and setting the IP addresses that we need automatically in your laptop. The only reason that this won't work is if you've got what's called a DHCP server somewhere in your network, so a connection out to the internet over the same switch or router that we're plugged into. Otherwise, you'll see here in just a second that once this blue circle stops doing what it's doing, you should be just fine. That can take anywhere from sort of 30 to 90 seconds, so just be aware of that. And as soon as that IP address is set by Windows, then we'll come up and a TUtil will run, so we'll just let that do its thing here. Okay, you see that there's this little red X. It says that there's no connections available. Here we may just need to restart TUtil in order to get it to recognize the network's been changed. Okay, there we go. Now, if you need to set the IP address manually, that's also an option. So say you've got the wintercom connected to the same network as the rest of your internet services. You can come down here, open network and sharing, change adapter settings. You should have one LAN connection in here. That's the one that's going to your Ethernet port. Click on Properties, IP version 4, and in here you want to set an IP address of 169.254.0.250 or something, 169.254.0. something. We use 169.254.1 and 169.254.2. So you don't want to use an address in that range, but if you're confused about this, give us a shout and we'll fix you up. Okay, back to TUtil. So there's a couple of things that we've done here. This screen pretty much looks the same as what you're used to. Scan button goes out and sees what devices you've got connected to the network. FS stands for feature server. Probably all of you know that already, but then you've got the radio numbers, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 for the actual wintercom extensions. This one is next door in one of our labs, so if I click here on radio 11, it's going to give me the device name. One of our developers' name is Ryan, so he's programmed in his name as the group ID here. Default channel 149, lots of signal on this guy. This system's kind of weird because it's got a combination of what are called test loads and antennas on it, and you'll see what happens with the signal strength in just a second here with that. So this page again hasn't really changed all that much. If I go over to the next menu item, version, and I click on Scan Tel, this also looks very familiar. The red shows firmware releases that you may consider upgrading. It's not absolutely mandatory. The reason that we've got these older ones on our test system is so that we can do regression testing on previous generations of firmware, so you guys don't have any problems in the field mixing and matching. But generally it's a good idea to have the newer firmware releases, and it's up to you whether you want to try and do that in the field or not. We can take you through that you know, in sort of some offline discussion, or we can do it on the bench when they come back. Most of the units that are out there now are already at 1012.1, so it would be pretty unusual to find those in the field. Down here, we've got our Scan Feature Server button, and this is what you want to see. You want to see no events logged. If you have a number over here of a wintercom, say it's 13, and you're seeing a number of unreachable events, like it's going to show you a number here. It might be, you know, 5 or 6. When you start seeing radios that show up device numbers here as unreachable, what that means is it means that the wintercom is, for whatever reason, not staying attached to the wireless network. And the types of problems that your customers are going to have when that happens is they're going to see things like dialing an extension sometimes makes it ring, sometimes doesn't. Sometimes phone calls will drop. Those kind of complaints are a direct result of that type of activity. So a healthy system should show this. The only way to clear this out is to reboot the feature server, just so that you know. The other thing that we can do down here is we can look for particular words in the feature server log that might be things that we're looking for. So unreachable is the word that we're looking for up here. If I click on this button right now, I'll see a count of 0, which means everything's healthy and happy. But there's other words that you can go looking for if there's something in particular. Usually by the time we're entering stuff down here, I'm involved in the call, and we're trying to help out with something specific. On the radio menus, there's what we've done here is we've broken this out. Radio is by itself. This is signal level, and you'll see, like I say, some pretty weird stuff here because of the differences in antennas versus loads. But if there's something to know about this screen is you'll see this value here that says near, which is the second level. Well, first of all, you want to make sure that you're at a signal level of -68 or better. So -49 is okay. You know, these are all what I would call healthy signal levels. The other thing that's really good about this screen is you see this near value that we put in, and what that means is because meshing radio allows every radio to talk to every other radio, it's important that we don't overcomplicate our signal level screens. So what we're doing is we're showing you the best radio path and the signal level for that path, rather than in the case of this setup we would have 20 different radio signal levels, because there's 5 radios, they can each talk to every other 5. But the important thing is number 11 here shows as being closest to 15. So if you go out and you look at where your antennas are in the site, and these values don't make sense for the physical layout of the site, then you've probably got a problem. So as an example, here 15 seems to be the one that's between 11 and 13. So if you went outside and you said, well, this doesn't make any sense, 15 isn't really isn't closest to 11 or 13. 15 is probably closer to say 12. then these numbers don't agree with what your physical layout is on the site of antennas, and that's something to be concerned with. This should agree with what you see when you go outside. If it doesn't, start looking at antennas or cables or something being out of order. These other things down here, you'll notice that there's min and max and average. Those are the white bars that we put onto these color gradients. So if you want to run this for 10 minutes and just see if the radio ever drops out or this kind of stuff, we'll show you what the minimum level ever is shown up for that radio since you started running the test. And same thing with maximum signal levels. There's a new feature here that we've got that is like a interference detector. So if you click on the update button, what it's going to do is it's going to go and it's going to create a list for you as to what radios are available in the system. And then let's just pick number 13. I can go out and I can do a scan. And what I'm going to see is I'm going to see any other devices or any other radio signals that might be causing me some interference. So here we've got the RSSID of other wintercom systems that are operating in the building. So Ryan is the one that we're plugged into. And keep in mind that this is at the wintercom that you're testing for down here. So as you move around the site, say you do a scan at 13 and then you do a scan at 12 and scan at 11, you're going to see different results based on, an interferer might be something that they've put on the drilling rig, or it might be something somebody's put closer to the company man's trailer. But this is the type of display that you'll see. You'll see the MAC address of the other device. We're not really sure what this is, but it's good to know that it's there. You can also see what channel the other devices are on. So as an example, if you've got a network that's behaving kind of strange and you're dropping calls and it's just generally intermittent, it's not behaving properly for you, what you can do is you can go around the site checking 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and so forth and just see where other people are in terms of the channels that they're selecting. Then you can go back and you can pick a channel for the wintercom system that isn't on the channels that they're operating on. And in rare instances where there is an interferer, and I'd stress that this isn't all that often that we see this, when you do see an interferer, if you change the channel, you'll generally get away from that problem and the system will start to behave itself. Again, and the overall list of things to try, this is relatively low down the list. It's usually other simple things like antennas and cables and those kind of things that cause issues. But this is a good source of information as to what other RF equipment there is out there. So again, moving around the site, if I want to do 12 as an example, I'll probably get pretty similar results here. Well, slightly different. So this is showing a wireless internet service provider in the building. Shaw Open as a carrier up here, and it's on channel 36. We can also go down to 11, do something similar, see if we get any different results. And we do. Here's one on channel 108. So this gives you 108 and 36 are not anywhere near us, so you wouldn't have to worry about them at all. They're certainly not going to create a problem for you. So this is your latest channel scan tool. There's also the bad boy bingo, as we like to call it, which is the scan. Now what we've done here is we've added the color red for radios that you have to be concerned with. So if you have ever talked to me and you remember some of the things we've talked about with this particular tool, is that there's a row, if there's a row or a column that contains a relatively high number of non-zero values. So as an example, if you had, pick 13 again, if you had this row right here was a couple hundred here, a couple hundred here, 99 here, and a couple hundred here, then you should start being concerned about radio 13. What this diagnostic is doing is it's asking the network to indicate if any one radio is having problems based on what the other radios are seeing. So it's kind of like voting. If you go into a room and you say to the group, you say, okay, who here is everybody having a problem understanding? all the radios report back and they say, okay, number 13, every time I send him a packet, it seems like, there's a 50-50 chance he's going to get it, or quite often he just doesn't understand, it's garbled. Then you can swap out 13 and things will come back to normal. The reason this is so important is because in the old days, before we had this tool, every once in a while we'd get a call about a site that was having issues, and the whole system performance was compromised. So in those days, what we used to do is we used to tell the guy at the site to unplug everything and then start plugging radios in one at a time, and we'd start looking at these indicators, and eventually it would become obvious when he plugged the radio in that was bad that there was one radio that was having an issue. Then you'd swap that radio and the whole system would come back. So at a basic level, the advantage of mesh is that everybody talks to everybody. The trade-off of that is that one radio can affect the performance of the entire network by being sort of the bad guy. So now with this utility, what will happen is if we see a non-zero row or column, that column will turn red, and that'll kind of indicate to you that that's a radio that needs your attention. Going over to the Tel section, this is the status of the various phones and PA channels. So these indicators on this software are exactly the same as what you see on the LEDs on the radio itself. So if you pick up the phone, you're going to see the green off hook come on. If it's number 11, it would be here. And if you have PA channels that are all showing in use and they're actually, that isn't the case, then you need to worry about rebooting the system or recycling them because the PA channels have gotten hung. That is a very, very rare occurrence, and it's actually linked to a bug that we should have fixed not much after this utility comes out. But basically, that's something to watch for, is if you see all the PA channels locked up, if two people page at the same time, that can cause that issue. The type of thing that you're looking for when you see off hook, and it's not the case, is you can have either bad cordless phones or bad phones, or else you can have a cable that's gotten crushed between the radio and the phone itself, or a bad wiring job. Those all four things can possibly cause that to show up. If it's a stable installation that you're going out and you can't see why things aren't working when they try and dial that extension, if they get a busy signal or those kind of things, look here, because that generally points at a phone problem. That's Tel. Lastly, the programming screen hasn't changed at all. So it's the usual thing. If you want to go to make your, let's take 15 as an example right now, and say you wanted to make that a 16, you can go and check on 15 and it should come back and it should tell you what the group ID and the channel number is. And if you want to copy that group ID over there so that you don't make a mistake typing it, that's what this copy button does. And now we can program 15 as a 17 as an example. So here's something that I should mention. If you try and program, the golden rule in programming is to always physically plug your Ethernet cable into the radio that you're programming. And the reason that we ask you to do that is because the first thing we do is turn the radio off when we're programming it so that it doesn't accidentally program some other radio in the system that you don't know about, or using a better example, if you showed up to a site and you had a 14 in the back of your truck and you need to turn it into a 20, and you start programming that 14, if we allow it to talk to the rest of the network, you might program the wrong 14 as a 20. And then all sorts of weird things happen and it's hard to straighten it out. So again, the first thing that we do when we click the program button is we turn the radio section off on the radio, so you can't program a radio that isn't the one that you're connected to. So just for the sake of showing you how this works, if I click this right now, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to turn off the program or turn off the radio in 15, and now it's going to give you this message saying that it's not responding. Now at that point, you're going to ask, okay, how far did I get? How badly did I mess things up? If you go back over here and you do a scan, in this case, it's basically stopped us because we're not plugged in. if you happen to try and program, I'll try programming a different radio. Let's try 13 as an example, and I'm going to program that as 17. If I go off and I come back, it's going to see down here it says isolated the radio, and now it's going to come back with this error message saying you are not directly connected to phone 13. Please cycle the power and phone 13 is no longer connected to the network. So if I go back over here and I do a quick scan, you'll see that 13 is gone. If I power cycle 13 now, it's going to come back onto the network and everything's going to be fine. The one that I am connected to is 11, so I can change 11 to something else right now, and it would be fine, as well as any other radio that you've got that's kind of a spare or whatever the case might be. And the only other thing I'll remind you about on radios, when you're programming them, it's awfully nice if you've got a test antenna or something like that to put onto it so that it's not trying to drive RF into an open load. Any kind of antenna is good to have on when we're programming the radio, although it's not absolutely critical if you don't have one. It is recommended. One other new screen here is the Reboot Screen. So this is kind of handy. We can't get it 13 because the radio's off. But say that I want to reboot either the radio or the tel section in any of these devices. Say you had some PA channels that were hung and you want to reboot 14 and then, or sorry, 15, 14, and 12 and 11. I think I might actually be plugged into 15 on this system, which is probably not a good thing. But now what it'll do is it'll hold you onto this screen. You'll notice that you can't exit out or go to another area until the devices are finished rebooting. And the reason that we do that is if you go to other screens right now, you're going to start getting kind of garbage information. And we keep looking out to see when the devices come back. So in about a minute, minute and a half here, you're going to see them come back, and everything will be fine. There you go. So now you'll notice that I can go back to the main screens and I can say scan, and you know, things are still coming back a little bit here, but you're kind of getting the display that you'd expect. The other thing you can do is you can reboot the feature server. Now here's something I'll show you real quick. Is if I go down here and I do scan feature server again, you're going to get those, well, we should get those unlogged events. Well, make a liar out of me. Generally, when you reboot, the feature server is going to tell you that the system is deregistered. We must have rebooted fast enough that it didn't come back or didn't show up. You can reboot your feature server here as well. So that's what this does. And this takes probably 30 seconds or so and it'll come back. This one you can exit out of because the feature server still doesn't mess up this display except for the feature server button. So you can see that. And if you just give me just a second here, what I'll do is I'll power cycle 13 and you can see it come back. Okay, I've given the power cycle to 13, so probably in about a minute we'll see it come back here. I think I also power cycled one of the other ones accidentally, so it might take us a while to get back into business. So what's happening now is you can see that 11 is the telephone section got ready first, the radio section booted up. We should see the feature server here any second. Now the other radios have joined up. Another thing I'll mention while I'm talking about it is sometimes you see these green buttons kind of come and go. The software is a little oversensitive to what's happening when the mesh is kind of resetting itself. So what I mean by that is as you add new radios, the mesh kind of redesigns itself on the fly. Sometimes that can create some ping problems. As long as after hitting the button a few times you kind of get what you're expecting here, everything's good. So that's about it. I mean, any comments or questions you have on the new software is certainly welcome. And again, we encourage people to give us calls when they're out on field sites if there's something going on that you don't understand. That way everybody gets the customer, our respective customers up and going faster, keeps everybody happy, and limits the amount of time that you're out there. So don't be a stranger. My number again is 403-681-6380 when you're having a problem. And or go through whatever dispatch process your company tells you to do, and hopefully that's of some help. And like I say, if you have any comments or so forth, just let me know either by email, eric.larson@teletics.com, or by phone. Thanks very much, and have a good day.